Laurie here. I'm here today to do the second half of my July reading wrap-up. I wound up finishing 17 things in the second half of July. I read a lot in the summer just because I have a lot of time. I go for a lot of bike rides, but let's get into it. So, I actually had a pretty good reading month. I had a pretty good listening month for the first half of the month, and then the Olympics sort of happened, and then I didn't do so well with listening, but I still made some progress. So the first thing I finished was a physical book, and that is This Poison Heart by Kaylin Barron. Here is a photo. Publisher for this one from, I think it was ALA. I really, really like this book. I gave this book 5 stars. I've never read anything by Kaylin Barron before. Cinderella is Dead is still on my TBR, but I love this book. This was like where I started reading some really unique books, and this one definitely fit that category, but it basically follows this girl who has always been connected to plants. She can kind of make plants grow. Could be a little bit dangerous. She lives in New York City. Her parents, her 2 moms, they own a flower shop. And she was adopted. So one day she gets this letter from her great aunt saying, "Oh, I have passed away. You have inherited this estate." And it sort of goes from there. It was a really quick read. I just loved it. There was a lot of twists and turns that I didn't necessarily expect. There's a budding LGBTQ relationship in it. There's also just a really fun setting. It reminded me a lot of The Secret Garden. That was one of my favorite movies growing up, but it also was more eerie and creepy. It had like a little bit of a vibe that I got from Among the Beast and Briars by Ashley Poston. I love the main character. As someone that grew up, like, you know, I live on Long Island, but I teach in the city. Her, like, interaction with nature when she got out there was just so reminiscent of what my kids are like when they tell me that they go out to, like, you know, upstate and stuff. It was just really, really fun. Very, very fast-paced, super engaging. I read it in, like, 2 days. Really liked it. Definitely excited for book 2 for that one. But definitely would go, I gave that one 5 stars. And then the next book that I finished, it started to be Olympic season. So Olympic season is when I want to read all the sports themed books, but I especially really just wanted to listen to some audiobooks. So I think I listened to Fierce first. Then I had to reread the GOAT's autobiography. So I picked up Courage to Soar by Simone Biles. Here is a photo. This book, I read it for the first time right when I went to her signing, but I just love Simone Biles. I think she is just a phenomenal athlete, and you guys are seeing this probably at the end of the Olympics, but I know she had sort of a tough games. She had to take a big step back, and I know she's getting a lot of hate, but I love her. I think she did the best that she could do, and she put herself first. And in athletes and in sports, that is something we as the United States don't like. So I gave her so much credit and so much props for putting herself first and letting her teammates do what she couldn't do. And I think she said that better than I ever could, but I just love her. I loved her autobiography. If you haven't checked it out, she comes from a really interesting background, and I just love seeing how the only thing you will know about Simone Biles, like if you don't know nothing about gymnastics, is she has won pretty consistently since 2013. Like she's run pretty consistently, but there's so much more to her as a person, and I just loved reading her audiobook, and I really hope she writes another one following this next adventure of her life, because I'd be very excited to hear from her point of view. But so far, this is a book that I really liked. I don't read audiobooks, but I love this one. The only thing that would have made it a little bit better is if she narrated it herself, but you can't have them all. And then the next book that I picked up was another audiobook, and this is actually a new one that I hadn't read before, and this is I Got This by Laurie Hernandez. Who Laurie Hernandez is? She is the youngest member of the Final 5 in Rio. She won a team gold and a silver on beam, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. This audiobook was super short, but I just loved it. I thought it was very interesting. Again, seeing the world through her point of view, seeing her experience. And I think for Laurie, I know probably the least about Laurie because she came on in 2016. So we didn't know a lot about Laurie Hernandez before she sort of made the Olympics. So I just loved hearing about her. Also, as I was reading this, I was also watching the Golden Series, which she was a part of. And then we've also followed her as she was sort of in Tokyo working with NBC. So I just loved hearing her life story. She's great. I definitely will keep following her and keep supporting her because she's great. And I think she had a lot of interesting takes, and I love seeing how she got to be an Olympic gold medalist, but also what comes next on her journey. Again, I don't rate audiobooks, nonfiction I don't rate, but again, the one thing that would have made this book a little bit better is if Sheenie read it herself, but again, you can't have everything. And then the next book that I picked up was just, it was one of my nonfiction books that I have been reading in the morning. Let me see if I can find it. I'm a theater teacher, and I have been working at my job for 3 years. I had 1 year where I had a show, and then 2 years where we haven't. So I've been trying to read some more nonfiction books about directing. So whenever I'm given the opportunity, I have a better headspace. I finally picked up Thinking Like a Director by Michael Bloom. I've had this book on my TBR for years, like since I was in college. I think I've literally owned like 7 copies of this book throughout my life. So I picked this up, enjoyed it, was very, very informative. I think I was able to take enough information and sort of transfer it to how I direct. But there's definitely a few more directing books I have on my TBR, especially because I don't think I'm directing this year to the scale that I was sort of expecting. But I don't write nonfiction. Really, really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to read some more in the future. I just don't know when that's going to be. But yeah, definitely if you're looking for like an easy book for directing, I would pick this one up. Again, not really for school directing, more for like professional, but I did find some gems that I felt like I could add to my practice. And then the next book that I picked up was another e-arc, and that is 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. Here you go. So this is a new series for her, and I really enjoyed this one. I found this book to be really, really enjoyable. It was an Asian-inspired fairy tale, but you basically follow this princess, and when her stepmother when she finds out that her stepmother has, sorry, my friend was texting me a little bit. I was asking her a question about gymnastics that was confusing to me. But so this book follows a young girl. When her stepmother realizes she has magic, she sends her daughter away. She sends her stepdaughter away, and she has to try to claw her way back to this thing, like to her, like her castle with her family, and her brothers are turned into cranes. So it's a really like complicated story, but I found this story to be a little bit more enjoyable than Spin the Dawn because it had a wide cast of characters. There was a lot of mystery, there was a lot of intrigue, there was some political stuff that I wasn't expecting. It was also a very different take on like a political marriage. Very, very similar to the plot that I saw in A Dragon Bird in the Fern that I read earlier this month. Go look up at my previous reading wrap-up because I talked about it in that wrap-up. I love this book. I thought it was really interesting, really different. Again, just another different type of story. I loved it. I did not see the ending coming. I'm really excited for book 2. I think book 2 is me sort of go along the same vein as what happened in Spin the Dawn, like structurally wise, but I still really liked it. Loved the main character. Really liked the relationship she had with her brothers, and there was some twist at the very end of the story that even I didn't see coming, but overall, really, really a solid read. 4.5 stars. Definitely really enjoyed it. And then the next book that I picked up is The Cousins by Karen M. McManus. I haven't read anything by this author originally. I know she has wrote the other series. This one is the first one I picked up by her. I liked it. I didn't love it. But you basically follow these 3 characters, Millie, Aubrey, and Jonah, and they are cousins. And their family has had a big falling out with their grandmother. But one day their grandmother sends them a letter saying, if you come work at my resort, we'll get to know each other, and maybe I can help you guys to get to know me, and maybe that will lead you guys to be put back in my will. This is a wild ride, I will say that. I didn't really feel connected to any of the characters. The only character I really felt connected to was Jonah, but it was an interesting read. I thought the ending blew my mind. Like, I didn't see the ending coming at all. I just didn't feel really connected to the characters. And the story wasn't what I was expecting. Like, I went in with one expectation and it wasn't that. but I liked it. I thought it was interesting. I would definitely read more by this author in the future. I'm curious if this is going to turn into a series. I haven't read anything, but I liked it. Definitely not my favorite thriller that I've read recently, but I enjoyed it. I got this from the library too. I had an e-arc, but I don't know what happened to it. And then the next book that I read was, let me see if I can find it. Is another e-arc that I got, and that is Tokyo Ever After by Amiko Jean. I really enjoyed this book. I was just in the mood to read some more Japanese or Asian inspired story in the lead up to the Tokyo Olympics. This one is set in Tokyo, so I really did enjoy it. This is Princess Diaries meets What a Girl Wants in a nutshell. But you basically follow this girl named Azumi. She never fits in. She doesn't feel like she fits in. She lives in California, I think. But when she realizes that her dad is the crown prince of Japan, she and her dad finds out, she's kind of sent there to kind of get to know her father and get to know her family, get to know the media, and a lot happens. There's a romance I really liked. There was also, let me see if I can find one for you, because, like, I think, okay, yeah, there's, like, clips from the Tokyo Tattler, which is, like, a newspaper article, so you kind of get that, which reminded me a lot of The Royals, by Rachel Hawkins, and I like this. I thought it was really interesting, very enjoyable, very fast-paced. I like the setting, I like the characters. We are getting a companion book to this. I don't know if it's going to be a direct sequel or a companion, but I really liked it, and I wound up giving it 4 stars for review. I thought the representation was really good, and it was a fun take on that, like, Princess Diaries, What a Girl Wants storyline, and I really enjoyed it, and I will definitely be checking out the sequel and more by this author in the future. And then the next book that I wound up picking up was for a blog tour that I was on, and that is Tia Lugo Speaks No Evil by Danetta Valente. I think I'm on a blog tour for this coming this week, so go check my blog. But I like this book. Basically follows this girl named Tia, and she unexpectedly witnesses a murder. And she sort of has to go about trying to uncover what is happening because someone is threatening her. This is a good book that I think is a nice balance between middle grade and YA. It sort of falls in the middle. For me, I struggled a little bit with the character, I'll be honest. And I think that, like, I couldn't figure out where the story really fit. I didn't know if it was a middle grade story or a YA story. I think it's classified as middle grade. It is really short as well, but I liked it. It had some, like, background elements that I liked. I didn't feel super connected to the characters, but the mystery was intriguing. So I wound up giving this one, like, 3.5 stars for review. I'll definitely read more by this author in the future. It was enjoyable, definitely not my favorite, but I liked the representation. I like the character. I just struggled a little bit with her throughout the whole story, and I didn't feel as connected to her as I wanted to. But it was an interesting take on, like, a middle grade mystery with definitely, like, a darker twist, which I don't think I've ever really read before. There really was no supernatural things. It was kind of, like, more fate-based. Like, you know, they think that, like, this will help you. So I like, you know, believing in the gods will help you. I liked it. I didn't love it, but it was enjoyable, and I gave it 3.5 stars for review. And then the next book that I wound up reading was, this is a graphic novel. I went through a graphic novel phase. I read a couple of graphic novels once, which was Claudia and the New Girl by Gabrielle Epstein, and this is based on Anne-Marie Martin. But this basically, this follows Claudia, who you know and love, and she winds up meeting a new friend who is very into art, and it kind of takes her away from the Babysitters Club in a little bit. And this one really did deal with friendship on a bunch of different sides, but also having balance in your life and, like, not putting all your eggs in one basket. And I just thought that that was a really interesting lesson to tell kids, because I still struggle with you know, with work-life balance, and I am going to be 34 in a couple of days. So really interesting, nice story. Definitely like to reread these. I said this before, I was not a reader of the Babysitters Club growing up, but I like re-experiencing the story through graphic novel, and I really hope that Babysitters Club gets a season 2 on Netflix. I think it has been announced, but really fun, and I'm definitely excited to read more in this series when they come out, because I think I'm finally caught up to date, which is nice. And then the next book that I'm going to talk about is an Avatar graphic novel, and that's Avatar The Rift. I read all 3. I haven't been putting them up as individual because I've been reading the bind-ups, but I think the next one I might have to put on because I don't think there was a bind-up. This was probably my favorite of that graphic novel collection, and I will tell you why. Let me see if I can find a picture of him. There's this little guy here that just reminds me of like a little Aang. It's like Aang had a baby. But this follows Aang and the gang as they're sort of going to honor an air nomad holiday that everyone kind of forgets existed. But when they get to that location, things are not as they seem. I really like this book. I thought it was really interesting. It also had a pretty like interesting connection back to Top's family and Top's like history. I really enjoy it. I thought it was great. Definitely my favorite. I'm definitely going to probably keep this one because that little guy is just so cute and I really, really like the art style. But yeah, definitely a 4-star read, and I hope to like be fully done with the comics so I can finally start Legend of Korra. I know you don't have to, but that's just how I operate. And then the next book that I wound up reading was another early arc, and that's from Bridget Kimmerer, and that is Defy the Knight. Bridget Kimmerer's newest books. I have read her contemporaries. I've also read her Curse Breaker series. I think that's what it's called. And I also started this one. I really enjoyed this book quite a bit. I think it's probably one of my favorite recent fantasy books I've read recently. But I do want to do a little bit of a disclaimer. It does have a pandemic element to it. So if you're still like a little bit leery about that, maybe skip this for the moment. But you basically follow these two characters. You follow Corcoran, who is the second son of the king, and he is like the king's hand, basically, sort of. If you've ever watched Game of Thrones, he sort of has that role. And then you follow Tessa, who is this apothecary who's trying to help the people of this thing get through this fever, and she's trying to make medicine and give it to people who can't afford it. Their paths wind up crossing in an unexpected way, and they start going towards they have to try to uncover what's happening because more people are getting sick, and they're sort of forced to work together. There is one plot twist I definitely saw coming at the very, very start of the story, but I really like this book quite a bit. I love both characters' point of views. I like that this book focused a lot on the brother relationship, and I just thought it was really interesting how it was just like Tessa had such a unique job, and I really like that. I've been trying to read some unique, like I read like a blacksmith story recently. This is the apothecary. Those jobs just are really unique, and you sometimes like fall into a lot of tropes in YA fantasy, but like I just like this book a lot. I thought it was great. I definitely am excited for book 2. And there was a couple of characters in this story that I sort of says, maybe that will be book 2 and book 3. I have a feeling I know who book 2 will be about, but I have no thing. I think it's going to be Corcoran's best friend, but I could be wrong. But I really enjoyed it, and I'm definitely excited to see what happens next in this world for sure. And then the next book I'm going to chat about is another early book. This doesn't come out until October, and it's called Luminous. The author that wrote A Crown of Something. I have it on my shelf. I just don't feel like going to get it. But this book does come out in October. This book sort of mashed up a bunch of my favorite tropes, but you basically follow this main character, and she has magic. But if you reveal yourself to have magic, then you're forced to work for the king's justice, and you don't want that because he basically brutalizes them and forces them to do things that she doesn't want to. So she tried to live underneath the radar with her dad and her 2 sisters, but when her sister is sent to work in court, she sort of has to make some decisions to protect her sister, and her magic comes out. There is also like a one of my favorite romance tropes is in this story, and it gives me major The Princess Will Save You, The Princess Will Always Save You by Sarah Henning vibes. It also gives me Shadow and Bone vibes because the type of magic that the main character has. It was great. Very, 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 very witchy. It had a political element to it. I like the focus on family. I thought the ending was surprising. I didn't see where that was going to go. It was super enjoyable. I wound up giving it 4 stars, and I definitely want to go back and read her other series, but I'm definitely really excited for the sequel as well. In the month, I started to slightly panic because I knew that my game, which we're going to talk about at the end, I knew I had 2 more books for my game to make sure that I was going to win my game. So I wound up picking up my next 2 physical books as audiobooks, and I actually really, really liked it. So the first book I read was Love and Olives by Jenna Evan Walsh. This is the 3rd book in like her companion series. This book follows a main character named Liv, or Olivia, and she winds up going to Santorini, Greece to visit her dad. Her dad is a Atlantis adventurer, and they wind up making a documentary to try to prove that Atlantis is real. I really like this story. I thought this was a very, very fun read. It's massive. This book is like close to 500 pages. I listened to it, and I'm happy that I listened to it. I loved Santorini, Greece as a setting. I like that. I've added to my dream list of places to go because it sounds so awesome in this book. This book does deal with a lot of self-discovery. There is a fun romance in here that I really did like, but it really was a relationship about Olive and her dad and how that relationship has changed and how it's progressed. I really, really liked it. Definitely, I don't know, because I think I like them all in different ways. I think I really like the relationship between the dad, and I like the Atlantis element to it. I struggled a little bit being in Liv's head a little bit because she was going through a lot, and I think by the time I got to the end, I really enjoyed it. The romance was super fun. The setting was super fun. There was a really, really unique bookstore in this story as well that I really liked. And I liked it. I wound up giving this one 4 stars for review, and I wound up enjoying it. Then I wound up picking up my next audiobook through was Sunkissed by Casey West. This was probably my least favorite story overall, but I will say this. Audrey as a main character reminds me so much. Avery as a main character reminds me a lot of myself as a kid. Like being very, very shy, not wanting to go out of her way, not wanting to go out of her comfort zone, but her parents wind up taking her and her younger sister to a camp that has no internet, and she sort of has to, and when her dad says something about her, she sort of takes the summer to sort of break out her comfort zone. She winds up meeting a boy, and some other things sort of come into her path. There was a lot of self-discovery in this story as well that I tend to really enjoy, and I wound up giving this 3 stars, but definitely Avery as a character, I really related to her a lot, and I think it's been so long since I read like a YA book where I related to the main character. Definitely for Avery, I definitely did. And the next book, physical book that I picked up was, I started a Olympic themed reading vlog. So the next book I picked up was Kudos Kids, The Mystery of the Masked Medalist by Maya and Alex Shubiani. Last year, there was a lot of books that came out that were supposed to be about the Tokyo Olympics. So this is one of them, and I finally picked it up. But it's written by Olympic gold medalists Maya and Alex. They're siblings. So you follow these 2 kids named, I don't remember what their names are. I think it's Andy and Mika. And their mom is like a news person, so they wind up going to Tokyo and staying in the village and going to the Olympics. But there's also this in-person game that they're trying to win. But when some stuff goes wrong, they not only have to save the game, but also try to win it. I thought this book was so fun. I just love that it was sort of like looked at, it kind of made me go around Tokyo, and I learned a lot about Tokyo culture and Tokyo, a little bit more than even Tokyo Ever After, because this was set at the games. If you have a young kid that just really, really likes video games, but also they're kind of hearing about the Olympics, this would be a fun one. Again, it was written before the pandemic, so it's very, very different how a normal game would be. But I liked it. I wound up giving it 3 stars, and I'll definitely check out the other books that feature the games. I think the next one is set in New York, which I will probably check out in the future. But overall, this one was a fun read, and I gave it 3 stars. And then I also picked up another graphic novel, and that is Goldilocks Wanted, Dead or Alive by Chris Colfer. This is a graphic novel set in that series of his. This is like a prequel novel because one of the main characters is still a frog. That's how I know it. So this basically is like what happened, a graphic novel set in Atlanta stories featuring Goldilocks if you've never seen her before. So this follows, it's like a prequel following Goldilocks, and you see a lot happen in the story that I don't think I ever really would have predicted, especially in regards to the Charmings. I liked it. That was a 4-star read. I enjoyed it. I love seeing Goldilocks again. The actual style, I have an arc, so it's not all done, but it's very, very pretty. I thought that the side characters she met were really, really fun as well. And I definitely need to go back and catch up on the Land of Stories series. I'm 1 book behind. I just got the audiobook, but wound up really liking this and gave it 4 stars. And then the last physical book I finished reading for the month of July was Break the Fall by Jennifer Ikapania. I cannot say that name. This is a Olympic-themed novel focusing on gymnastics set at the Tokyo Olympics. And I love this. I read this book in about a day, and I devoured this. I am a massive gymnastics fan. Definitely my favorite sports team that I follow. Calls me when I'm not filming, but when I'm filming, everyone calls me. But so this does not follow like Simone or the Real Girls, but it's like loosely inspired by it. And I think what this book really did well is it sort of took a bunch of situations that have happened in the past like 5 Olympic cycles and sort of distilled it into one book. You could definitely see elements that have really happened, but sort of given to her own, you know, this author's own creative license. But you basically follow this girl, Audrey, who's dealing with a major back injury, and she's coming back. She's really good at uneven bars, and there's a lot of dynamics between the girls. This book does focus a lot on the abusive nature of gymnastics, not only the abuse of physical abuse, but also emotional and coaching abuse that happens. And there's also a romance, and I like the way that this romance was done a lot more than I liked any other romance that's featured in like a high stakes athletic competition, because I really did like it. But I loved it. I think I not only wanted to know who is going to win at the end of the day, because you follow them from Olympic trials all the way to the end of event finals, but I also just cared about the girls and wanted to make sure everyone was okay and they had a good life. Even though you were predominantly in Audrey's point of view, you also did see a bunch of the other girls, and I really enjoyed it. Wound up giving it 5 stars. Definitely one of my favorite sports reads I've read recently, and I really, really liked it. So I did wind up completing my TBR game, so I don't remember which color is which, but here are the prompts. One was a punishment and one was a reward. So let's see. The punishment was, Libro discount. That means I can get a couple of books from Libro FM. I can do like a Libro FM order, and then what would the punishment have been? Neglected rules. I don't know what that means. I don't know what I was trying to say. It says neglected rules +1. I don't know what that means. But so I get to do a Libro FM order, which is actually really, really exciting because I love supporting independent bookstores. So I will definitely add that to my thing, and I will probably do that probably like this month. But yeah, thank you guys for watching my wrap up, and I will talk to you guys for my next video soon. Bye, friends.